Καλησπέρα σας κυρίες και κύριοι και φίλοι της εκπομπής Θέματα Υγείας. Απόψε έχουμε μια ιδιαίτερως εκλεκτή καλεσμένη, την καθηγήτρια Δρ Ελένη Παλαζίδου. Καλώς ήρθατε κυρία Παλαζίδου, ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Γιατί μήνες την κυνηγούσαμε για να έρθει, αλλά διδάσκει. Πότε στην Αγγλία, πότε στην Κύπρο. Ευτυχώς σήμερα κατάφερε να είναι μαζί μας και να μας μιλήσει για πάρα πολύ ωραία θέματα, τα οποία θεωρώ ότι είναι τα πιο χρήσιμα και τα πιο κρίσιμα στη σημερινή κοινωνία. Και νομίζω θα συμφωνήσετε μαζί μου, ιδιαίτερα στο θέμα της κατάθλιψης. Θα προλογίσω την κυρία Παλαζίδου, θα σας πω λίγα από αυτά τα τρομερά που έχει κάνει. Θέλω μισή εκπομπή για να πω όλα τα προσόντα που έχει και με τι έχει ασχοληθεί στην κοινότητα. Θα πω ότι γεννήθηκε και μεγάλωσε στην Κύπρο και πήγε στο σχολείο Θηλαίων στη Λευκοσία. Σπούδασε ιατρική στη Σόφια, στη Βουλγαρία και κατόπιν έκανε ειδικότητα εδώ στην Ψυχιατρική, στο Λονδίνο, στο Maudsley Hospital και στο Ινστιτούτο Ψυχιατρικής του Λονδίνου επίσης. Είναι ειδικός ψυχίατρος ενηλίκων, είναι consultant, διευθύντρια αντίστοιχα του NHS τουλάχιστον 20 χρόνια και τώρα είναι independent consultant, είναι ανεξάρτητη, δουλεύει σαν ιδιώτης ουσιαστικά. Διδάσκει και στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο και στην Κύπρο. Στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο κάνει έρευνα και διδάσκει στο Barts και the London School of Medicine, στο Queen Mary University, στην Κύπρο στο St. George's Medical School, University of Nicosia. Εργάζεται με μια ιδιαίτερη ομάδα, δύσκολη, με Σομαλούς και πηγαίνει και στη Σομαλία, γιατί είναι μια ομάδα, όπως μας εξηγούσε η κυρία Παλαζίδου, με ιδιαίτερα ψυχιατρικά προβλήματα, διαταραχές και τους βοηθάει με τον τρόπο τους. Είναι πρόεδρος της Ελληνικής Ψυχιατρικής Εταιρείας στην Αγγλία και οργανώνει πάρα πολλές εκδηλώσεις στο ελληνικό κέντρο. Είναι πρόεδρος της Ένωσης Κυπρίων Αγγλίας. Έχετε διατελέσει πρόεδρος, διάβαζα ούτε ξέρω πώς, στο βιογραφικό και μπράβο σας. Έχει κάνει έρευνες, έχει κάνει δημοσιεύσεις, έχει γράψει βιβλία. Έχει ένα special interest, ένα ιδιαίτερο ενδιαφέρον, όπως εγώ την καρδιολογία, εσείς έχετε την κατάθλιψη και τις διπολικές διαταραχές και την ψυχοφαρμακολογία. Έχει γράψει ένα βιβλίο για την κατάθλιψη παλιότερα, το οποίο μεταφράστηκε σε πάρα πολλές γλώσσες και όπως καταλάβατε είναι δραστηριότατη, πολυγραφότατη και ιδιαιτέρως ικανή. Μεγάλη μας χαρά και τιμή που έχουμε έναν άνθρωπο να μας μιλήσει σήμερα για αυτά τα θέματα, γιατί εγώ ως γιατρός θα πω ότι η κατάθλιψη είναι στην ημερήσια ατζέντα. Βλέπουμε πάρα πολλούς νέους ανθρώπους με κατάθλιψη, 3, 4, 5 κάθε μέρα, πολλές ψυχιατρικές διαταραχές. Θα μπορούσαμε να κάνουμε 10 εκπομπές για αυτές, αλλά αποφασίσαμε με την κυρία Παλαζίδου να κάνουμε ένα sequel εκπομπών και να μιλήσουμε για τις βασικές ψυχιατρικές διαταραχές, αφιερώνοντας μία εκπομπή στην καθεμία από αυτές. Σήμερα, στο πρώτο μέρος της εκπομπής μας, θα μιλήσουμε για την κατάθλιψη και τις διπολικές διαταραχές. Η κυρία Παλαζίδου, επειδή είναι πάρα πολλά χρόνια στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο και διδάσκει κυρίως στα αγγλικά, θα ήταν ευκολότερο, ίσως πιο πρακτικό, να μας λέει κάποια πράγματα στα αγγλικά. Οπότε θα το αφήσω σε εσάς, όπως αισθάνεστε καλύτερα να μιλήσετε, γιατί η χρόνια τριβή με τη γλώσσα και η ορολογία είναι πολύ πιο εύκολο πολλές φορές κανείς να εκφραστεί.
Αν είναι δυνατόν να μιλήσω στα αγγλικά, θα προτιμούσα για τους λόγους που είπατε.
Ναι, το κατανοώ.
Αλλά επίσης και για να μπορούν να παρακολουθήσουν και οι νεότερες γενιές, για τους οποίους τα αγγλικά είναι πιο εύκολη γλώσσα από τα ελληνικά.
Σωστά.
Αλλά φυσικά μπορούμε να μιλήσουμε και λίγο ελληνικά μεταξύ.
Εντάξει, θα σπάμε λίγο έτσι τη μονοτονία της αγγλικής γλώσσας, θα λέμε κάποια ελληνικά. Ναι. Αλλά το κατανοώ, γιατί διδάσκετε τόσα χρόνια, δουλεύετε, όταν εκπαιδεύεσαι, ζεις σε μια χώρα και δουλεύεις με αυτή τη γλώσσα στην καθημερινή πράξη, είναι πάρα πολύ δύσκολο μετά να γυρίσεις πίσω και να θυμίσεις πώς λέγεται αυτό στα ελληνικά, πώς λέγεται η ορολογία. Εγώ είμαι πιο λίγα χρόνια από εσάς εδώ, οπότε το κάνω ακόμη. Για κάποιους που είναι πάνω από 20 χρόνια είναι ευνόητο. Ούτως ή άλλως έχουμε και πολλούς, έχουμε αγγλικό κοινό. Έχω συναδέλφους μου στο νοσοκομείο, σε μία από τις δουλειές που κάνω, και μου λένε όλες οι εκπομπές είναι στα ελληνικά. Κάνε μια εκπομπή στα αγγλικά. Λέω κάνω που και που, οπότε θα χαρούν, θα σας ακούσουν. Σας καλωσορίζω και πάλι. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ που θα μιλήσουμε για τη σημαντικότερη νόσο της εποχής μας και που πιστεύω τα επόμενα χρόνια θα ξεπεράσει ακόμη και το σαχαρόδι διαβήτη, την κατάθλιψη. Ο λόγος σε εσάς.
Ευχαριστώ που με καλέσατε και χαίρομαι που μου ζητήσατε να μιλήσω σχετικά με την κατάθλιψη, γιατί είναι μια πολύ συχνή ασθένεια. Και ήθελα να προσπαθήσω να... Φυσικά μιλώ στα ελληνικά τώρα, μιλήσω στα αγγλικά.
Όπως σας βγει.
I wanted to demystify depressive disorder. And I think the main message I want to pass is that depressive disorder is an illness. It's a mental illness. It is not what we understand in lay language, being existentially unhappy. All of us from time to time feel unhappy for a variety of reasons. But we're able to shake it off and it doesn't affect our life and our functioning. Depressive disorder as such is a disorder of the brain. It's an illness like any other physical illness, and it can affect people's lives significantly, both their personal life and their working life. And we know now there are studies which look at how various physical and mental disorders affect people's functioning. In terms of time lost to work globally, not just in the UK.
Definitely.
And depression is second after heart disorders, ischemic heart disease. So it has a major effect on people's life and their quality of life.
It might become first online, because you see, with I do cardiology, and you can prevent a lot. In depression, how can you prevent?
You can, to some extent, you can prevent a relapse of illness.
Indeed.
And certainly reducing stress is one way of discouraging the presentation of mental disorders as well as some physical disorders, and in particular depressive illness. But there is, I think the other thing to point out, you mentioned cardiology, there is a connection between cardiological disorders and depressive disorders.
Tell us about it.
And there are, we now know a lot more about the physiology of the brain and what goes wrong in the brain to bring about a clinical picture of depressive disorder. And there are various changes that occur, various abnormalities that have been identified, which are relevant to the way depressive disorder comes about. And one of them is immunological changes, which are very similar to those that occur in cardiological conditions.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. This is relatively new research. But certainly we know that there are various factors involved in the genesis, in the production of depressive disorder. One is our genes. There is no specific gene that is identified that will determine the presentation of depressive disorder, but multiple genes, different parts of the brain in different neurological sites that may make one vulnerable to depression. Stress is the other major problem, in that stress produces, I'm talking about extreme stress or continuous stress, not the average day life
Continuous
stress.
exposure.
Yes, continuous exposure to stress and significantly high levels of stress, which then affect our hormones, in particular a hormone called cortisol. And high levels, persistent high levels of cortisol, we know can be toxic to the brain. And that can lead to various changes in the function of key areas of the brain that are relevant to depression, and can actually bring about structural changes. And we have research evidence that some key structures in the brain, like the hippocampus, for example, can shrink as a result of that, yes. And the hippocampus is a vital part of what we call the neurocircuit of depression. Maybe if I could open a parenthesis here to explain what we understand by that. For many years we knew that there are various parts of the brain that are part of the emotional circuit, the various structures that communicate with each other and they're responsible for the production of our emotions. And now with the technology available, with neuroimaging, being able to have pictures of the brain, being able to look at the function even of the brain with what we call functional magnetic resonance.
MRI.
Yes, MRI. We have been able to identify various parts of the brain which communicate with each other, and when some parts of that circuit malfunctions, then the symptoms of depression come about. And the hippocampus is one key area of this neurocircuit.
Yeah.
And the hippocampus is relevant because it's involved in the storage of memory, and in particular in depression, in the case of depression, emotional memory. Of course, it's not the only part. There are different other parts of the brain, but I don't want to go too much into the science of it and confuse people.
Yeah, definitely. It's just to make it clear to our viewers.
Yeah, just to explain that it's the brain function that goes wrong that brings about symptoms of depression. So people cannot just pull themselves together, as sometimes we assume, or lay people assume, say, come on, pull yourself together and it will go away. It doesn't, unfortunately, because our brain malfunctions.
So
yes, yes.
Okay, that's very interesting. And regarding cortisol, I didn't know that it can really affect the brain function.
Yes, it can, yes, yes.
Very interesting. Is it also a hypersecretion of cortisol? Could that also have a metabolic impact on the patients? Because a lot of patients complain of changes in their metabolism. Some of them, of course, become comfort eaters, but they gain weight mainly because part of the assessment, the PHQ-9, we ask them, do you eat too much or do you have loss of appetite? Would be cortisol also contributing to all that?
I don't think cortisol has direct effect on that. I'll come back to that, the overeating or not eating. But just to mention that patients who have Cushing's disease, for example, which is a condition which is caused by increased secretion of cortisol for a variety of reasons. I won't go into the various types. But these people are more vulnerable to depression because of this persistent hypercortisolemia.
Exactly. I'm happy you say that because I was trying to make a bridge. I have a patient who I look after in the surgery, and it's an important connection between, she has Cushing's disease, she's going for surgery soon, and she has severe depression, and it's a chain between symptoms and depression and Cushing, and so many biochemical connections between one and the other. It's
very complex, but I think the key connection is the hypercortisol, the high levels of cortisol.
Indeed.
Now, in terms of eating that you mentioned, people with depression present in a variety of ways. They don't all have exactly the same symptoms. And in terms of appetite, generally the appetite is decreased, but in some people there is what we call comfort eating. So it's not that they are hungry, so the appetite is not increased, but they eat particularly sweet things like chocolate or sweets as comfort, and this is why they put weight on. While other people, in the most sort of classical picture of depression, people lose their appetite and they can actually lose a significant amount of weight.
Indeed. It's what we say, τρώω για παρηγοριά.
Τρώω για παρηγοριά, ναι.
Πολλοί άνθρωποι το κάνουν αυτό και ιδίως γυναίκες. Αισθάνονται μοναξιά, γυρνάνε στο σπίτι το βράδυ, τα σχολικά προβλήματα, η πίεση, το άγχος και τρώνε γιατί κάτι τους κρατάει συντροφιά, όχι γιατί πεινάνε.
Ναι, και αυτό φυσικά προκαλεί περισσότερα συμπτώματα κατάθλιψης, γιατί νιώθουν άσχημα και
μετά αισθάνονται τύψεις και δεν μπορούν να το αλλάξουν και είναι ένας φαύλος κύκλος. Μάλιστα. Ναι, συνεχίστε για την κατάθλιψη. Τι θέλατε άλλο να μας πείτε για την διάγνωσή της ίσως?
Ήθελα να εξηγήσω, όπως είχα πει στην αρχή, ότι υπάρχει μεγάλη διαφορά μεταξύ κατάθλιψης σαν ασθένεια και κατάθλιψης ή μελαγχολία, όπως συνήθως μιλάμε στην καθημερινή μας ζωή. Όλοι μας περνάμε στάδια που δεν νιώθουμε καλά, νιώθουμε κάποια μελαγχολία κλπ. αλλά δεν έχουμε κατάθλιψη, ασθένεια κατάθλιψη. Δηλαδή θέλω να τονίσω ότι η κατάθλιψη σαν ασθένεια είναι κάτι πολύ σοβαρό, πολύ διαφορετικό από τη συνηθισμένη μελαγχολία που όλοι περνάμε, το existential unhappiness που όλοι μπορούν να περνάμε από καιρό σε καιρό. And in order to make the diagnosis of depression, we need a certain number of criteria which are recognized by the international classifications of mental disorders. And unless people fulfill these criteria, we do not say they have a depressive illness. And when people have a depressive illness, then their functioning is impaired, their personal life is affected significantly, their family life, their work life. So it is a pathological state. It's very different from just being unhappy.
Definitely.
I don't know whether you want me to go into the symptoms.
Yes, please. Yeah, because I think people listening to you would recognize their symptoms in what you say, and they will come and seek for help. Because we should also mention here that Greek communities, and I don't know about Cypriot communities, but we are similar nations. So they have a taboo. They're very restricted about expressing these things. We wouldn't dare to say that we go and see a psychiatrist. It's quite badly criticized. Whilst here, people will come and say, I know I need help, I know I need treatment, please refer me. It's completely different cultures and mentalities. So if we mention the symptoms, I think we might help some people and motivate them to go and seek for help.
Yes, I think it is an opportunity here, as you touched on the subject, to mention the issue of the stigma of mental disease, mental disorders. And this, in the UK, obviously, there is a lot more understanding, and there has been a lot of education of the public in terms of mental disorders. But the stigma of mental disorders still exists even here. But of course, compared to our countries of origin, it's not as bad. Certainly what I see in Cyprus and in Greece, and also Greeks in the UK, people do not want to admit they have mental health problems. They feel embarrassed because they feel that they will be criticized or they will be ridiculed. And I notice that people prefer to go to a psychologist if they feel they have problems, or to go to a neurologist, but not to a psychiatrist.
Which is irrelevant.
Yes. Because neither of them can adequately help with mental disorders as such. In the UK, there was a campaign a few years back. It was called Defeat the Depression campaign, and that lasted a year or more. And they surveyed people at the beginning, or before they started the campaign, and the questions were, what do you think depression is?
All right.
The majority of people thought, oh, it's just nothing to worry about. Yes, people should pull themselves together. Some people said, well, there are changes in the brain, and that's what depression is about. After the campaign, the percentage of people who understood that it is an illness was very much higher. So I think this shows that it is very important to educate the public, and I hope that these kinds of talks will help people understand that mental disorders and depressive disorder is like any other illness. Also, I want to convey the message that these conditions are treatable. And if they are not completely cured, they are controllable, and people can have a good quality of life. And the more they avoid getting help, the more difficult it becomes for it to respond to treatment. So it is important that people seek help as soon as possible, and there shouldn't be any shame in asking for help. And if I can mention some very important people who have depression, Churchill, for example,
really
had depressive episodes. I think he or used to call them the black dogs.
All right.
And during these periods, he couldn't really function well. And at that time, there weren't effective medications.
Definitely.
people like, and I can mention the names because they themselves made it public, people like Stephen Fry, a very known celebrity, highly intelligent, successful person, has openly said that he has bipolar disorder.
All right. Catherine Zeta-Jones, bipolar disorder.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, lots of people in the public eye have been able now to say, yes, I have that and I still have a good life, so you could too. I think that's the important message. Depression doesn't mean somebody has a weakness of character. And the examples I gave demonstrate that that is not the case. So it doesn't mean if you are having symptoms of depression that you are a weak person and you are admitting to being weak. It's nothing to do with that. It can happen to any of us at any time in our life.
But many people think so. You're weak, it's your character, you're very sensible, that's why it happens to you.
Sensitive, you mean?
Sensitive, sorry.
No, it's nothing to do with that. Not at all. It is an illness, and if you have that illness, then there is treatment that is effective and you can get back to normal. So I hope that I've been able to convey that message, and I don't know if you have any more questions before we go on to the
diagnostic criteria. I would like to hear a bit about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In terms of the diagnostic criteria, what we call the core criteria, the central criteria, are persistent depression, feeling low, feeling persistently low. That means that most of the time our mood is low. And anhedonia, which comes from the Greek word idonia, means inability to enjoy things, get pleasure out of things. So those two things, those two states are there most of the time in somebody who has depressive disorder. In addition to that, there are other physiological and psychological changes that come about. In terms of psychological changes, what we call cognitive changes, people look at themselves in a negative way. They don't think they are as good at what they're doing as they used to be, or as other people. They don't, it depends what they are more particularly concerned
Low self-esteem.
about. The self-esteem in terms of appearance, in terms of ability, success, and so on, is very impaired. Their confidence in themselves goes down, so they have, this affects obviously their performance. They worry that they don't do well at work and they might lose their jobs. They become hopeless about the future. And they feel that their life is not good anymore, it's never going to get right. And this can lead to a state of hopelessness, and people may start thinking of dying or wishing themselves dead, or even planning to kill themselves because they feel there's no life for them. So these are very serious psychological changes in one's thinking. They feel guilty about things. Sometimes people start ruminating about things they've done in the past, and they blame themselves. And sometimes this can actually reach what we call psychotic state levels, in that they may believe they have committed a crime, they deserve to be punished, and this can become a delusion. I won't go into definitions of delusion, we can talk about that another time, but it's a serious state to be in. In terms of physiological changes, more commonly there are changes in the ability to sleep. So people have difficulty going to sleep. Typically they wake up early in the morning, earlier than they're normal, and they can't go to sleep. Or they wake up, they go to sleep and they wake up during the night one or more times during the night, and they have difficulty going back to sleep. Sometimes the opposite happens, that people may sleep long hours, and they may even sleep during the day, but the sleep is not refreshing. They wake up and they feel tired. The appetite, I have already mentioned, is decreased, and some people lose weight, and at times they stop eating or drinking. It becomes an emergency in terms of treatment. Other people may eat for comfort, as we mentioned before, and put weight on. The other physiological abnormality is interest in sex. That is reduced, and this obviously in a relationship, this may affect the relationship with the partner. They lose interest, or men may have difficulty performing.
Erectile dysfunction.
They can have, yes, problems with that. There are also other changes in, for example, concentration. This is very common. People have difficulty focusing on things. So reading a book or reading the newspaper, or even watching an ordinary soap on television, which doesn't require a lot of attention, people find it difficult to follow it through because they cannot concentrate. Yeah. And obviously, this may be a problem at work if one can start making mistakes because they're not concentrating. Another key feature is people feeling tired all the time. And they feel they have no energy. And this is a very common first presentation. And it should alert GPs, for example, where patients go. They're the doctors that are first approached by patients, that persistent tiredness, if it's not accountable by some physical illness like anemia or heart problems or something else, then it could be depression. It's one of the common causes. Pain is very common. People often have aches and pains when they are depressed, which they cannot account to. Or if they have some kind of chronic pain, say back pain or shoulder pain or whatever, it gets exaggerated. These are the common features that people present with, and these are the criteria we use to determine whether somebody has depression and what the severity of that depressive disorder is.
All right. And we have therapeutic options. We have CBT, which is cognitive behavioral treatment, where we usually refer, and we have tablets depending on the severity.
Yes.
Before we go to bipolar disorders, do you want to say anything about this?
Yes, yes. In terms of psychological treatment, we now know that problem-solving approaches which directly tackle the symptoms of depression and how to deal with them, like, as you mentioned, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, are well recognized, and research shows that they are effective. So this is the approaches, the psychological approaches that we prefer to use in depression. They are effective only in mild depression and in some moderate levels of depression. Otherwise, there is a requirement for medication. From moderate to severe depression, there is a need for medication in the form of antidepressant drugs. And we have a large variety of antidepressant drugs. The first line of treatment are what people know as SSRIs. These are selective serotonin, what we call serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They work selectively on the serotonergic system. The Prozac-like drugs, people have heard of Prozac. And then in more severe forms, we have other drugs that work on another system as well as the serotonergic system, that is the noradrenergic system. So they have more complex action, and they are more effective in more severe forms of depressive illness.
What I would like to ask you is, how long do you think when I see a lot of patients, they come to me on a daily basis with depression. I see a lot of students at the last year of the university, 22, 23, I have 3 patients at the moment, 2 in law school, the other one is doing something with IT, computers. So they really have severe depression. PHQ-9 was 20. And there is a confusion in the primary care how long we should give treatment. You give them fluoxetine, paroxetine, you can give whatever your choice is. And they say give for 2 weeks or a month, and then review if you should give further Of course, we refer them to CBT, but from your experience, how long is it safe to give to a patient in primary care treatment before we refer further?
Yeah, this is a very important question. Thanks for asking this. Firstly, if I could explain to the audience what the PHQ-9 is that you
yes,
mentioned.
Correct. Yeah.
PHQ-9
doctors.
is...
Horrible.
I know, we're both doctors and sometimes we forget that other people don't know the terms. So PHQ-9 is a questionnaire that is used by GPs, by family doctors. And it's a screening questionnaire that tells you that beyond a cut-off point, this person may have depressive illness, and of course you use it in your daily practice, which helps a lot. The patient can complete it while they're waiting to see you, presumably.
Yeah, usually I do it privately in my room.
Yeah.
9 questions, I ask them, I have the screen towards them.
Right.
And I prefer to explain to them, because sometimes they don't understand the questions, and I give them the answering options, and then we calculate at the end.
Well, this is very good, because then you know I've got to ask more questions now because this person seems to have a depressive disorder.
Yeah.
Once you establish that they have a depressive disorder, then quite rightly you say you will give unnecessary fluoxetine or
paroxetine,
sertraline or paroxetine, whatever. There are lots of them. I don't want to promote one or another.
No.
Now, how long do you give them medication for? Before we go into that, I would like to explain to people 2 things, because I think there are 2 major worries in people when we prescribe antidepressants. One is, am I going to be dependent on them?
First question we get.
So am I going to be addicted, doctor, and that means I cannot stop them? Well, the answer is no, they are not addictive. And 2, are they going to have side effects? They have some side effects. The most common side effects of this type of drugs, SSRIs, are some nausea, a bit of headache, and they usually go away after a few days. But if it is persistently there and is troublesome, then we can change to another one.
Definitely.
So that's no problem. It is important to convey that message so the patients don't then throw the tablets in the bin. If they get side effects, they come back and we can give something else.
Or they call you panicked. Doctor, I feel sick every morning.
Well, I always say to people, ring me, don't worry, ring me if you have any problems, then we can discuss them. If I can't reassure you, if it's something serious, then we change them, of course.
Correct.
If I can reassure you, I will do that. If you're not reassured, I still change it, because I want you to take the medication and I can give you something else. So in that way, people can then stay with the medication more comfortably, because the medication needs to be taken for a fairly long time. It will not have an immediate effect. So the patients may think, okay, once I take the first tablet, then I'll feel better. Well, I'm afraid that is not the case. It doesn't work like that. Because the way they work is slowly they bring about changes in the brain, in the various, what we call neurotransmitter systems in the brain, the various neurons that connect with each other and convey messages in the key areas that are relevant to depression. And various changes need to be to happen, which bring the system back into some kind of balance, and then the symptoms start resolving. So it will take on average 2 to 3 weeks for people to feel significant improvement, and it may take a bit longer, another couple of weeks or longer, for people to go fully back to normal. Now, then we are on to stage 2 of the treatment. Once they're back to normal, and by normal I don't mean just not experiencing the symptoms we talked about before, but also functioning well, the way they did before they became depressed, both in their personal life and their work life. So once they are back to full normal functioning and free of symptoms, then after the first episode of depression, they need to continue for a minimum of 4 to 6 months on the same dose of the antidepressant.
Okay.
And then we taper it off. In people who have frequent recurrent episodes, then we need to talk about continuous treatment long term.
Long term. Oh, it's very good to clarify, because there are a lot of Chinese whispers between, you know, practices and CCG and guidelines, and I have heard different colleagues talking about that in different ways. Give 2 weeks, give a month, don't continue.
Oh no.
Which I don't find good, because I have observed, I give my patient, tell them it takes 3 to 5 weeks to see an improvement, and then they come to me after that period of time, and I see completely different faces walking in my room, and they're so excited and so thankful, which is a huge recognition and satisfaction for the doctor. Exactly.
To see, yes.
So if you suddenly stop the treatment, they will have a relapse.
Unfortunately, yes, because what the medications do, I don't want to go into the neurochemistry of it and confuse people, but the brain works, the brain consists of nerves which communicate with each other, and they communicate with each other through electrical impulses and through releasing chemicals from one nerve to the other. And the way the medications work is to change that chemical transmission, is to increase that, to increase the activity of the neurons. Now, that happens very quickly on starting the medication. But if you remember what I mentioned before, that these nerves communicate with each other and the whole system needs to fall into some kind of balance, that takes time to do. And once it goes into that state of balance, if you suddenly stop the medication, it will slip back.
Indeed.
So you need to allow enough time for the system to normalize itself.
All right.
And then you taper off the medication. We have, if I could explain, we don't unfortunately have a test, say a blood test or a scan of the brain that we can do to tell us, okay, this person now is back to normal, their brain is back to normal. We don't have that. So we have to rely on the clinical evidence. And the clinical research evidence says to us that if you stop the medication at the time that people go back to normal, if you don't allow that period of 4 to 6 months that we talked about, the possibility of the person going back to the state of depression is 50%. So it's quite high. Yeah.
I will ask you, unfortunately we ran out of time.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, don't worry. It's just when you discuss about such things, and I know depression, it's a big chapter and so important. I think we can talk again and again and again, and you have so much to say. On our second part, you will tell us a bit about bipolar disorders and panic attacks and anxiety disorders. So we will try on our second part.
We'll make it more less detailed, perhaps.
But depression is so important.
Yes.
There is so much more to say. Honestly, I think we just touched the surface, only the surface. Honestly, it's very important. Maybe if you give us in the future, as we have discussed, some of your precious time, we might come back to that and discuss a bit more. I want to ask you, once you start treatment, how soon after that you should repeat the questionnaire, the PHQ-9, and see, compared to the first score, if that has dropped and if that is a good guidance regarding the effectiveness of our treatment?
Well, the patient will notice the changes, and there may be fluctuations. So the patients may, for a few days, feel well, and then they have a few bad days. So it doesn't really matter. So I mean, it's good for you to do it maybe every time you see the patient, but it's perhaps preferable to use the Beck Depression Inventory rather than PHQ, which gives you a score that gives you a better idea about the progress. I can give you a copy if you don't have one.
I don't know if PHQ-9 you see is on the CCG, is on the system, on system 1. You use it and you save it on the system. Everything else, what I do, when it's not on the system, I print it. The patient completes that, and I give it to the secretary to scan it, put it, upload it on his folder, so I can see it next time.
But
that's an option.
It doesn't matter. You can use either. But you can, I certainly do it every time I see the person.
All right.
And what I ask the patients to do is to follow their own mood state in a simple way. I give them a chart with a line which is from zero, which means this is normal, fully back to their normal self. Each one of us is different. They know what their normal is. And then from there to the top, I put numbers up to 10. And every day the patients score themselves on that number. Say they started with 8, which is the most severe end. And then after 2 weeks they're down to 6 or 4, and so they can see their own progress. And that helps patients a lot as well, because they can have more control themselves, they can monitor themselves.
And if they feel better and they say, well, I feel much better, shall we cut down?
No. No.
If we do tappering and say, okay, take every other day or something like that, is not correct.
No, because the level, in order to be effective, the levels of the medication in the bloodstream need to be stable and to remain at the level that was required to get the symptoms under control.
No, I don't mean after 5, 6, 8 weeks, but after 6 months, you have a successful treatment, the patient feels well. After they say, well, it's been 6 months and I feel much better, shall we stop it now? And I don't want to stop it suddenly, I want to do it tapering. And that would be my last question. If there is a way you would advise to do it, so it will be a safe way to avoid relapse.
Yes, this will depend very much on what medication you're using, but generally, once you establish that the person has been well for more than 4 to 6 months, back to normal, then is the time to taper off, as you suggested quite rightly. Now, some drugs, like say paroxetine or venlafaxine, some people may have heard of, have what we call a short half-life, which means they wash out of our system very quickly, within 6 hours to 8 hours. So you cannot say take it alternate days, because on the day they stop it, they'll have withdrawal problems, and then they start it, and then they have withdrawals. So it's important to gradually decrease the dose. Every week we cut it down by a little bit. And depending how sensitive the person is, some people are more sensitive than others. If you have a drug and the only one is fluoxetine, which has what we call very long half-life, and the person is taking a standard dose of 20 milligrams, that you can stop straight away. But with the others, you need to taper it off.
That's good. That's extremely helpful, and thank you very much, because I had some questions myself, and I got it from the expert. I'm so lucky. Thank you for this really precious time where we discussed something so important, and I hope we will have the chance to do it again in the future.
Yes.
We will do the second part with other very common mental health issues. I will say goodbye to our viewers, because they will see the second part in a week's time. Κυρίες και κύριοι, ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ που όσοι μείνατε μαζί μας για να συζητήσουμε αυτό το επίμαχο θέμα, ένα σοβαρό θέμα, την κατάθλιψη που θα είναι σίγουρα η ασθένεια του μέλλοντος σε πολύ λίγα χρόνια από τώρα.
Είναι η ασθένεια του τώρα.
Είναι η ασθένεια του τώρα και λέμε το 2020 θα είναι νούμερο 1 ασθένεια σε όλο τον κόσμο. Ραντεβού σε μία εβδομάδα, να δείτε το δεύτερο μέρος με την κυρία Παλαζίδου, στο οποίο θα μιλήσουμε για διπολικές διαταραχές, αγχώδεις διαταραχές, κρίσεις πανικού και όλα αυτά που μας κατακλείζουν κάθε μέρα. Καλή εβδομάδα και καλό σας βράδυ.